Welcome to WLNM, the web novel and manga review, hosted by Zeke Changuris.
Welcome to WLNM, the web light novel and manga review, the podcast dedicated to bringing our listeners the artists, writers, and independent creators that are part of this renaissance of publishing, giving us stories to entertain and inspire us. Today we welcome Michiel and Hadi, the co-authors of Lord of Goblins Volume 1. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so
it's nice to be here.
Hey, I'm very happy to have both of you on. So who wants to start by telling me about Lord of Goblins?
I guess I'll start about it. So, to sum it up, the plot itself, it sounds kind of basic. You have this guy who achieves almost everything he wants in his original world, but he gets assassinated, gets reincarnated into another world as, the lowest of the low. He's not exactly a goblin, but he's like a subspecies, so he's lower than a goblin, to say it. Well, the story is about him like progressing, climbing up his way in this new social ladder he finds himself in. It's a slow read. I think like the first 50 pages on me, but once you build up the foundation of the story and you go further, you see him like he's making these groups, he's going on expeditions, etc., etc. I don't want to go too far into the story, but
we don't want to put any spoilers.
Yep,
Yes.
Exactly.
So, is his reincarnation into a more struggling persona? Is that a karmic thing? Is he being punished, or is it just kind of a happenstance kind of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of random.
Okay,
it's not some karmic lesson or anything like that.
Yep, it's like more just fate being fate to him, and just putting him in this even worse position than he started with.
Okay, so fate being fickle. Many of us football fans know about that. Fate can be a very fickle mistress when it comes to whether it's a goal or not. So, all right. Okay, this is a collab. This is collaboration between you two. Well, how about each of you telling me what got you into writing? Were you always writers, or was this something that you decided, to start when you got older? I know some people have been telling stories since elementary school, and then others writers who didn't start until they were in their 30s. So what sparked the idea to take a story and put it together and get it out there?
So I guess I'm one of those people that's started in elementary school. I have like books at home in the attic filled with sketches and those little stickman comics and all that stuff. And I just started with that for I think until I was 12 years old, and then I just stopped until 2018. That's when I started writing short stories on my own, just for myself to, I guess, relax a bit and learn a new thing. Like writing was pretty new to me back then, especially in English. And eventually I found web novel, like the site, and I just posted some short stories on there, which of course didn't pick up or I did anything important, but they were out there and I had written them. And that's when I was like, I was just browsing some other stories on web novel, and that's when I found Hadi actually. So,
Hadi, how did you start off in your writing lifestyle?
Yeah, in my case, when I was I'm not that old anyway, just 23 or so. But saying in kindergarten, the teacher told us she chose one of us to say a story, and every time it eventually became me. When I was a kid, I used to say some fascinating tales in front of the class, and I used to also draw a lot, and my creativity was kind of great. Yeah, it's my first podcast. I'm kind of nervous.
It's all right. It's just like we're sitting at a pub or a bar and I'm asking you the questions.
All right.
Yeah, just think of it that way.
Yeah, so I've begun as a kid telling them stories to my class. Then I started drawing my own art. But when it came to my art, I didn't share a lot with the others because over time they got bored. Eventually, I found Guzella, where I started writing a novel after reading some of them. My first novel was more of a copycat, which I'm still embarrassed about to this day.
We all have one of those, don't worry.
Yeah. But my second one was a little better. It was also based upon a game, but I made the story. It was something of my own. Eventually, I got more into video games and stopped writing for a while until I found Royal Road. And, you know, translations for web novels and light novels and stuff like that. I wrote my own story on Royal Road, and I once asked for a cover, and there I met Mike.
Exactly.
So did this to quickly backtrack, never apologize for anything that you're taking from a prompt. That's how I see, that's what I consider
but it was an actual copycat.
Yeah, I consider
that's why I apologize.
It's all right. We have all put something out there that we're not thrilled that others have read, because either it's amateurish or we completely rip somebody else off. It's the growing pains of being a writer, so never feel too guilty about that one. But okay, so you met on Royal Road. Did it start from commenting about each other's stories?
Well, it's really random actually how it happened. So I was like learning Photoshop back then, and I was like searching for some stuff to do. I had no clients or paying clients back then, and I just messaged the author of a popular story back then. Like you have this weekly popular section on Webnovel and on Royal Road, and that's where I found his first novel that he like seriously started writing, but we never finished it. And I just messaged him if he needed a cover because I read some parts of his story. Yeah, and and so I just messaged him, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, "I'll do it for free," and that's when the friendship started.
So how does this work? When you were setting up this story, was it a matter of you both got together and like, okay, these are the elements I like, and Hadi was like, these are the elements I like, so how can we make them a story? Or was it, is one of you kind of going along more for the ride with the other? How does this collaboration work?
I mean, it was kind of like we were on the same frequency. When we started speaking, like we immediately connected. We had the same interests, the same series we liked, books we liked. And then I was just randomly talking to him, and I said to him, what if we just create a story together sometime? Because I didn't have enough time to write one by myself. Right now we need to write a new volume every 6 months or something. So, you constantly have to put out a word count. So I wasn't sure of myself if I could do that. Further on, so I was like, maybe if I just write with someone else that I like and has the same ideas for a novel, that could work out. So that's when Hadi was also fond of the idea, and we just started off rambling like, what should be the genre? Both of us immediately, it should be a monster reincarnation because we both like those kind of novels. You can take Spider as an example, Slime, Overlord, all things that I like. Yeah, Goblin Kingdom, stuff like that. We're just inspired by the setting. Instead of the strong hero that gets reincarnated to save someone or beat the demon lord, we always like to have the protagonist start off as a weak creature or just a monster in general and work his way up the dungeon or wherever he is situated. And that's where we pick it off with Lord of Goblins.
Okay, that's that's a really unique story. I've talked to a lot of writers over my lifetime, and even more so in the last year. And that's a very unique story because collaboration is a hard thing, especially among creative people. Um, Creatives tend to be
To
very
clash against each other.
yeah. It's there's a lot of trust there between you two, and that's impressive to me. So
Yeah, we do trust each other, but I also have to note that like we're both lazy and our laziness cancels each other's out. So we're like we constantly. I'm like if Hadi isn't writing, I'm just constantly being like, Hadi, are you in a doc? Are you in a doc yet? Are you writing? And he's like, sure. And when I'm slacking, he's like, Mike, go get in the doc. So we kind of cancel our laziness.
so
Come
you're using
on,
this like
get in, Mike.
through you're doing this like through an open doc like in Google Docs.
Yeah, Google Doc.
Yeah, Google Docs.
That's great. So what part of this universe do you think that you've created is like the most interesting part of the universe? What sets this fantasy world uh, what makes this fantasy world different, do you think, than other places?
I think it has to do with how much information we reveal about it during the story itself. Because from the reader's perspective, they get the story, but much of it is still unknown. They know that has been this event in the past, and that there wasn't anything left of that civilization where in a time where love is. But we like to slowly reveal it and build up like that, which means that we're also not sure ourselves because we haven't outlined the story that far. We do know.
Mostly it relies on instincts as well.
Yeah, it is like that. We build the world as we go.
The story writes itself.
So Hadi, you're saying that you guys are operating on instinct and not with a hard outline of what you're working on.
Well, in the beginning, we used to rely mostly on instinct.
Yep.
But recently, yeah, it was the first volume. We didn't know if it would catch on or not. But over time, we made a process. We start some outlines, we start work upon them, but as the story writes itself, sometimes you find the characters defy the outlines, and you have to modify the blueprint to work with the novel and with the direction it's going in.
Yeah, I generally call that either writing yourself into and then out of a corner, where you start writing and you're like, oh crap, it doesn't seem to work with the way I want it to go. I need to start changing things. And that can be a very, very challenging moment for writers.
Yeah, we have that a lot, especially with the outline, like how you said. Like when you try to make an outline, we're like, all right, this sounds good, let's continue with our topics. But then when we actually start writing it, we're like halfway, and then we look at each other and like, what are you writing right now? This doesn't work like that. And then we have to go back to the outline, edit it again. And sometimes we're just like, let's just skip the outline, just go in the doc, and we're gonna write for 3 hours on a row, and then we'll see what happens.
That's marching the abyss. What could go wrong?
What can go wrong? Yeah. So, how many drafts did you do of the first one? I mean, did you kind of like shuttle back and forth on who does the big edits?
Oh, yeah, the first draft was, well, we changed a lot. Like we rewrote a lot of chapters. Yeah, we had early on when we first started the story, we were just going on instinct. We had a clue about the world later on, but we just went on, which led to us having inconsistencies between chapters, and the readers got really pissed about the inconsistencies. We also had like this sister, because Lev, the protagonist, has this sister when he wakes up, and everyone on Railroad hated that sister. They wanted us to kill her off. And we kept her. We were like, no, we're not going to kill her off, please.
In the end, we were surprised. Some people actually now like her.
Yeah, strangely enough.
Evolution of character, I guess. So Um, okay, you do a kind of a discovery writing process because that seems to fit your kind of style. So because you're doing a discovery style process, have you written things that have surprised you? Have you gotten to written something and been like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Even though I'm the creator of this universe, I didn't see that happening. Have you ever written something like that?
I think one of the
guess.
battle scenarios, because fights can be quite, you can predict fights. They can be quite chaotic. So when you write, you find the character, you find that it's better to make, you find the characters make some unexpected moves.
Yeah, I've said this to Hadi before, but when you're like really in the writing mood, you just start going off, start tapping away. It feels like, the characters are kind of showing you what you need to write, if you know what I mean. So it just goes, you just go with the flow, and then when it's done, you look back at it the next day and you're like, wow, well, that didn't turn out that bad.
I've done this.
Yeah, right.
So, Hadi, what do you think your strongest style of scene to write is? Are you good with the backgrounds? Are you good with dialogue? What is your strong suit?
I think I'm better with the background. I can handle the dialogue, and we do exchange that between us. I'm usually fluent with English, but with your first podcast, you can be quite nervous.
So how about you, Michael? What's your strong suit? What do you think your strong suit when it comes to writing is?
I think it has to do with dialogue, definitely. Dialogue, and I guess I am also like into the backstory a bit, but we both are, of course, but I think I'm a bit better in the dialogue, because we sometimes joke about Hadi using the same expressions like 10 times in the same paragraph.
Trust me, as an editor, I deal with crutch words all the time. I have a writer who works for me in my side job, and he really uses absolutely every other sentence. So yeah, I do understand what it's like to have someone with a crutch word.
Like, and just to be clear, it's both of us. Like, we both use the same words a lot, and we kind of infected each other with the same words. Once you see it reappearing, and you're like, oh, I'm also using that word now. Let's go. And we clone each other's words.
It's like a virus.
It's like a virus. And then when we first gave Moonquill our manuscript, they were like, you have like 50 times he sighed in this chapter. Please rewrite your manuscript. We did that.
And he smiled 20 times this chapter.
He smiled. He glared in the process. All that stuff.
It is one of those things that you do have to find yourself catching. That you're like, is there another way to say this? Really? This is what I want him to say, but is there really another way to say this? And you ask yourself,
the source is your friend.
Yeah.
When it comes to the thesaurus and other sites and other dictionaries like it, are your friend.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Oh, one of the first, my first attempts at writing anything long, I didn't understand how to write prose. So everything was like the character's name and then what they said, the next character's name and what they said, then what they did, and then the character's name and what they said. It wasn't
quite monotone.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. It took a while. It took a lot of reading to make me a better writer. So
same.
Yeah. So what are you reading what have you read that has, you think, influenced you as a writer?
Well, in my case, it's Overseer by Celestia, Dungeon Games, and if you were early for Roy Road, you also know Rehamster. Most of the old Roy Road works. Sadly, most of the authors of that period of time kind of went away. You can't find them anymore.
I mean, how about you, Michael? Who's
Well,
influenced you?
I guess it's just like a whole bunch of novels, basically, especially light novels more recently, because I actually started reading light novels in 2019, so that's very recent. Before that, I was more into Belgian comics, actually. I read a
Okay.
lot of comics, mostly action, out of fantasy, sci-fi. I think my first light novel was Sword Art Online, so I guess started there, like the isekai kind of genre, the red hole of isekai. And then I moved on with other novels and series.
Overlord.
Overlord, yeah, it's also a big one. I guess the typical ones like I mentioned before, Slime, Spider, all those. Yeah, I mean, all of them inspired me basically. I can't really point at one novel and be like, yeah, this is like the novel that did it for me, or
Okay. Well, okay, you both seem to like isekai. So, what isekai world would you prefer to be reincarnated in?
That's a tough question because there are many worlds that have many aspects that you desire in your life. Example, think of a magical world. Imagine you have all of those great powers, everything, but you have to keep in mind the danger of living in such a world. There are many worlds, many ideas, many things you can think of, but it's hard to choose one. You can live in a sci-fi, you can live in a magical world, you can live in... Of course, I wouldn't live in a Xanthia novel. I hate cultivation.
I would say I definitely wouldn't want to be reincarnated into Lord of Goblins world. That's for sure, because we made a pretty shitty world for
Bronze
MC.
Yeah. Well, when I think of like hardcore, kind of like a isekai that is a bleak world, uh, uh, Grimgar, Fantasy and Ash.
Yeah, Grimgar. Yeah.
Yeah,
that
Grimgar.
that
Exactly,
talk
yeah.
about a story that I always describe it as it is the story of a soldier's, like the slog of a soldier's life. Get up in the morning, you have to go hunting, you have to, you sleep in the cold, you have to, you know,
And death can come any second.
yes,
You
exactly.
could get your throat slit by goblin. You can get eaten by an abomination, a mutant. You
Yeah.
never know what happened.
Exactly, and that always it felt very real, a very real soldier story, even though it was taking place in a different in a fantasy world. It just felt so like
Yeah,
overbearing, like you're
especially since. Sorry, continue.
no, go ahead.
Especially since if you die in Grimgar, you wouldn't stay dead.
Yes.
You'd likely become an undead.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. Though I don't know whether I necessarily always think of SAO as a Sekai, but if even with the death game as the likely option, if I had the chance to go to Full Dive VR and end up in SAO, that's my kind of world. That's my kind of world. It's just I really enjoy the idea of all those skills, and it's just hardcore adventuring. But
Yeah, speaking about skills and systems, it's also something Lord of Goblins doesn't have. You were talking about like the soldier
Yeah.
seeing his daily life. Well, that's kind of what happens in Lord of Goblins actually. You have this slave, you meet him, you see his daily routine. He's going to the mining quarters or he's getting tasks from the task manager, and then you see his chores, his expressions, conversations with his sister, like mundane things. And
yeah, it will. And I like that so you're saying you don't go overly heavy in the, oh, they got this skill or that skill kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no
No.
RPG system.
Yeah,
There's no system.
my latest rant has been I have enjoyed the Shield hero novels. I really have, but there are some times where the author just goes on and on about leveling up and what this skill does and what that skill does, and to me it kills the momentum of the story. I know there are plenty of people out there who find that absolutely fascinating, but I'd like a little more movement sometimes.
And it's like you read this paragraph, and then in between it is like a page-long system log.
Yes.
And then once you've read over that, you're like, oh, I'm already out of the flow. I need to get back into the story.
Exactly. Yeah, I find it kind of interrupts things for me, but that's how some of these writers. I mean, there is an appetite for it, or they wouldn't be selling all the books.
Definitely, especially on web novel sites. Like Lord of Goblins didn't have a lot of success on, say, Railroad or whatever. And
I think 220 followers or so.
Yeah, 220 followers. I think our max was 250 when we were in training for a month.
I think 220, dude. But still.
Hey,
it's something.
You have people reading your work, and that's why you're writing. Is so someone can read your work, and that in itself is important, and that itself is accomplishment. Because there's plenty of people who write and put out words and don't get don't get many comments. And as embarrassing at times as this is, one of my
that's what shocked me.
Yeah,
that's what shocked me.
Stories. It was. No, sorry. No, it's just one of my most successful stories that I got people to enjoy and read was a story I wrote for my younger sister many years ago, where I wrote about her in the world of My Little Pony. And I put that on a My Little Pony fan fiction site. And it got quite a few, it got like 100 people who read the story. And I'm like, holy crap. For a short story I wrote as a birthday present, this really did well. So, it made me feel very, very good. I mean, so it's, having people read your books, read your stories is an accomplishment, and it really does. It makes it feel like, I'm not just screaming into the void.
That's true. But that's like also what happened with us. Like we just continued writing and we didn't actually care about it anymore. At first we did, of course, like refresh a page and just see if we got any followers, and we did get some, but it didn't hinder us from continuing to write or enjoy the process of writing itself. And like every small comment was something special to us. We, something.
Yeah, the best thing is when the best thing you can find is people enjoying your work. You see, one of the reasons I abandoned my old novel is because there weren't many comments. That can kill the novel. It can make you get bored.
Yes. Yeah.
It's definitely like this balance between like you almost stop writing and then you see this one comment and it's like, please continue. And where's the next chapter? And you're like, all right, I'm going back in the dock. I'm going back in. I'm going to continue.
Right. I'm trying to think. Oh, shoot. I can't remember. I had a great story in the back of my head about a writer recently. He was about to give up on writing, and he wrote out of his genre, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to just write this because this is the author who wrote Traveling Witch Elena, which was created into an anime recently. He had written other stuff and nothing had done really well. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to give up on this. And so he decides, you know what? I'm going to write for me. I'm going to write the kind of story that I want instead of something that fits in a genre like the other stuff that he had tried to write. And that's the one that gained traction. That's the one that people liked. And kind of made his career. So it's quite fascinating to see how that one little decision to focus on writing for enjoyment, writing for what you want to write can really change the way people perceive what is putting on the page.
Yeah, that's also what I have experienced when I was also writing another story along with Lord of Goblins. Just to Lord of Goblins wasn't doing that great, but I also wanted to write something that would be read, I guess, like it's a classic system novel,
Yeah.
But I didn't like writing it. I mean, it picked off, but every time I look back at it, I was like, "This isn't what I want to write," And you just go back to Lord of Goblins. And that's like, yeah, now I feel better now. I'm back to my old manuscript. I can continue writing. And then you just drop the old story or the other story and just go back to what you like writing. Even if the other novel is doing better because it has the tropes that people like to read on that site, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what can we? Okay? Sometimes when people get to chapter 2, to volume 2, they can take a very sharp left turn or right turn, and throw some things at you that you weren't expecting. Is your second volume going to feel like the first volume, or is it going to feel very, very different?
Well, the second volume is a bit of an extension to the first because the first ends with, I guess, a cliffhanger.
Okay.
Quite vague cliffhanger actually. So it kind of binds in with volume 1. So it doesn't change a lot. They're still in this cavern that they started in volume 1. They're still on an expedition to trying to finish it and go back to the upper levels of the cavern. So the world hasn't changed a lot and the characters haven't changed a lot. But the second volume is more about the interaction with the characters that you've come to know in volume 1.
Okay.
So I guess it's a bit of the same with some new interactions. But speaking of change, volume 3 is going to be quite different from volume 1 and 2 because it's the world opens up. There are more possibilities now. It isn't just one cave system.
Oh, that's a nice tease for
Exactly.
anybody who's reading. So, anything you'd like to add, Hadi?
Not really this time. Mike explained it better than I. Mike explained it better than I can do, to be honest.
Do take a look online on Amazon.com, which is where everybody buys everything nowadays, for a copy of your book. And if you're listening and you enjoy conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button. And until next time, keep reading.
This has been a WLNM podcast.